Welcome to Becoming Untriggered, a podcast brought to you by psychodynamic coaches and parents of three, Lavinia Brown and Andrew Lynn.
Together we normalise and unpack common challenges faced by couples and parents, explore how these could be symptoms of unprocessed trauma, and support you with the tried and tested tools for you to show up as the mum or dad, partner, and person you deserve to be. Welcome to Becoming Untriggered podcast. Today we're looking at the difference between men and women. Sounds obvious, right? But the whole book, Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus, wouldn't have been written if it wasn't obvious that men and women are different. And I think a lot of relationship problems that come up aren't necessarily relationship specific, but are often to do with women not understanding how men are different from them and men perhaps doing the same thing. So that's what we're going to unpack today and hopefully take some pressure off what might be boiling away in your relationship so that you've got slightly not lower but different expectations of your partner and therefore can see each other with more compassion rather than more judgment.
Yeah, and we've certainly seen the same patterns arise with all of the clients we've been working with in our relationship recovery program. A lot of these problems are magnified by trauma, but there is also like a root cause to them, which is maybe a lack of understanding from the man's point of view about what it is to be a woman, what it's like to be a woman, and vice versa.
Let's look at the most common issue for our couple clients at the moment, which is the woman perhaps being too volatile, too intense, too passionate, and the man being accused of being withdrawn, dismissive, shutting down any emotions in the woman. From a woman's point of view, I think women know that men aren't as emotional. That's kind of obvious. Women are much more intuitive, more passionate, more emotionally expressive about what they're feeling because society partly has allowed us to be. But I don't think we realize the extent from what you've told me and from what I've seen in the men clients we're working with of the repression that is perhaps inherent, at least in Western culture. And this really came to the fore for me in this amazing book that we both read called Self-Made Man, where a woman dresses up as a man or tries to pose as a man in very masculine areas of life for a whole year. And she also learned just how different it is to be a man and how, I don't want to spoil the conclusion, but part of the conclusion was that it's really sad that men are so repressed and can't. It's not that they don't have the capacity to feel, obviously they feel, but it's a really like dog-eat-dog world out there for men.
Yeah, I think it is, and certainly in some aspects of life. I think culturally we learn how to process and express our emotions differently. And I think part of it for a man is that emotions maybe have more consequences for men than they do for women. Because if you're angry or if you've got repressed anger and you express that anger to somebody as a man, it can have quite high stakes consequences. And we learn growing up that if we get in somebody's face, if we say something, if we insult somebody, it can lead to physical violence. I think a lot of men have kind of got trauma around that, about having expressed their emotions and even been punched or even being bullied for their beliefs or expressing their emotions. So unconsciously you learn to repress, you learn to not express your emotions, you learn that anger and violence and expressing those types of emotions can lead to serious consequences.
So you're saying it's a survival mechanism for a dangerous masculine world?
Yeah, in some ways, and maybe there's no safe way to express the emotions now for men.
See, I don't think women get this. We want you to be as expressive and as connected to us as possible. And I think there's definitely pressure from society these days for that to happen. We're meant to be, like we've talked about in previous episodes, you're meant to be in the birthing suite when we're giving birth. I mean, a lot of couples work together. We work together. We spend most of our day together. In the 1950s, that just didn't happen. The man went out to work, and then when he got back from work, he went to the pub, and the woman was with other women, washing, cleaning, laundry. There was quite a big divide between what women did and men did. And I don't think there was the expectation for this couple joint happiness that there is now. And because of that, I think that's made it worse for women, because women expect men to be like us, especially when it comes to parenting. That's perhaps something that men weren't as involved with before as they are now. And we want you to be on the same page. But that means, like we talked about in the last episode, being gentle, being conscious, being respectful. And that means being very in touch with your emotions and expressing them. And this is something that comes up for my clients. They're like, my partner can't do it. Or he doesn't want to. He's not on the same page as me. He doesn't like holding space for our child's big emotions, especially if it's a son. And we talked about the ramifications of that in terms of trauma and where you're coming from last episode. But today we're looking at the fact that perhaps you're just not brought up to be like a woman because you're different.
100%. We are different. We're not brought up to be like a woman. We're not supposed to attach to all of our emotions and express them.
I see this coming up again in terms of not just that the woman wants to feel connected and on the same page as a parent, but also, like this came up for us yesterday, we're in the middle of unpacking our house from Spain. And I hate packing, I hate unpacking. I like my living environment to be neat and tidy, and I like to know where things are. That makes me feel safe. You could say that that's a coping mechanism from trauma, probably is, but it's also, I think, who I am. I'm Virgo. I like things neat and tidy. So for me, unpacking and packing is hideous. It's the opposite of what makes me feel safe. And when I feel overwhelmed, for example, with the unpacking, I had to do all the sorting of sheets and towels and crap like that. If I feel overwhelmed by that, I like to know that someone else is there for me. So yes, that relates back to my trauma. I didn't have anyone else there for me most of my life. I had to do everything by myself. And I am extremely independent and very self-sufficient. That's what it's created in me. I am very good at that. That doesn't mean that I like that though. So when I was overwhelmed yesterday, I wanted to know that you were on board with what I was doing and how I was feeling about it. So I was trying to get you to help me. I was like, can you help me sort this out? Will you help me later sort out the da-da-da-da-da? And you kept saying, I'm sure you can do it. You can do it. Like, yeah, you've got this. And actually, that's not what I wanted at all. I didn't want, you believe in me. I wanted you just to go, yeah, I'm here if you need me. That would have been enough for me. And a lot of my clients have the same thing. They say they say something to their partner and they just want the partner to go, yeah, I'm here, or sure, or I agree, or that makes sense. We don't need more than that. We just need to know that you're there. And you said to me yesterday something that shocked me. You said, a man finds that annoying. I was like, but how can it be annoying? I'm saying, are you there for me? Can you be there? And you were like, yeah, but I don't want to be. Feels like I'm doing double my chores, which was really shocking for me. Like, how can a man not want to say to a woman, I'm here, I'm there, we're together, we're in this. Yeah. I've got you.
My perspective on that experience, I was like, okay, so there's so much to do here. Like, I packed all the stuff both in Spain, we've brought it over, I've unpacked everything, I've done the beds, I've been to the storage, I've got loads more to do later. That's all my stuff. I haven't asked you for any help doing that, I'm just doing it. And then I'm like, you've got a really little bit to do here, and you seem incapable of doing it on your own. You want me to do half of your little bit that you've got to do. And I was like, can't you just do it?
But like I said, I didn't want you to do it with me.
You kept asking me to do exactly that. You were like,
Yeah.
I want you to sort through these sheets with me and put them into different piles.
Yeah, but what I was saying underneath that was, are you there?
Yeah.
Are you there? I need to feel you. So I think women will relate to that. We want to feel that you're there, that you're not distant. Why? Because one of the women's feminine traits, if you like, is collaboration. Women are very collaborative. We are co-creative. We do things in teams. It's why women hold circles. A circle is somewhere where you share and you are seen and you're sharing and you're all equal. There is no hierarchical leader of that circle, just someone holding space for what is there. The masculine, however, is individual. It is singular. So that's where, again, the man and the woman and their different traits can rub up against each other if you don't realize that the man is different. You just think they're being rude or mean. I didn't, because I didn't get triggered by it. I needed you, and I was a bit put out by it. Not because I couldn't do it. Of course I could do it, and I did do it. But I felt like I wanted to feel like you were a part of my process.
Yeah. And I wanted you to acknowledge that I had lots of stuff to do myself and get on with it and do it yourself.
So that's one thing where we realized that women need more connection. So I sometimes say to my women, don't look for a best friend in a man. He might be your best friend and your soulmate. And I think you definitely are my soulmate and my closest friend because we spend so much time together and you get me and I trust you and you feel safe and you get it. But that doesn't mean that you get me entirely. And I think women assume that because you can show up in that way, that you are therefore deliberately not showing up in that way in other aspects of life. But like you said, it's a tough world out there for men. And I think it's important to look at that because we're bringing up men. If we have sons, we're bringing up men. And I know I don't want them to live in this dog eat dog, you look at me wrong and I'm going to punch you in the face world. But I don't know how we manage that. I think the problem is men don't talk enough about what it's like to be a man. That's the problem.
I don't think they think about what it's like to be a man. I think we're just living it. We're just experiencing it. I like to think about what it's like to be a man, so I like to have some kind of perspective on it, and I do like to have conversations about it. Like I said, that book was really interesting. Women want men to be in touch with their emotions because that makes them feel like we're connecting on some level. But just to go back to that example of anger, you can be angry with me, you can be rageful with me, you can shout, you can do all this stuff because I'm safe and I'm not going to react. I'm not going to punch you in the face, right? Whereas a lot of my clients say to me, like, if anyone else had said to me what my wife said to me this week, then we'd be fighting. Like, there's a line that you cross.
Physically fighting.
Yeah, physically fighting. There's a line that you don't understand because you don't, obviously there is physical abuse, but within a loving relationship, you don't understand that there's a line. You don't have a line.
No.
Because we're just here and we're like, okay, you're angry. I can disconnect emotionally, but I'm not going to physically, there's no physical repercussions for you.
Although you have said to me, I think once I slapped you. Because we see this in films. The woman slaps the man, right? Says, how dare you? The man steps out of line and says something mean or inappropriate and he gets slapped. So I remember the beginning of our relationship, I slapped you and I think you didn't slap me back, but you said, if you do that again, I will slap you. And I was like, but you can't, you're a man. You're like, I can and I will. Because that's partly cultural that men, even though my dad hit me, so it doesn't make sense. But there is an expectation that men are going to take abuse, because it kind of is abuse, and not react.
Yeah, I think there's a part of men's lives that women don't understand and can't understand. It's the same thing as when the dog barks, right, at somebody in the garden and it's 2 a.m. and the man has to get up and go downstairs and pick the hammer up and walk outside and be prepared to face 5 people that are going to try and break into his house. And he has to be willing to engage in extreme violence to protect his family. That's like a real thing that's potential for men. And just like if you go out and you're a man and you start being emotional and attaching to your anger and screaming at people, you're going to get punched in the face. There are repercussions, and there is a serious violent aspect to men's lives. And that's not even the dysfunction. That's what violence is. Violence is when men can't control that and they attach to it. That's what road rage is. That's what all of these things are.
It's sad though, because you told me yesterday about the football match that you'd watched where the older men, I mean, relatively 29 is not old, but the older men jostle to make sure that the younger men, say 19-year-olds, know their place. And I know this happens in nature, right? You'll get a stag with his harem and the young bucks can't challenge him. He will make sure that they are physically, probably, I'm not a nature expert, put in their place until the point where that buck is strong enough and his strength is equal and his bravery is equal to that stag, and then they will displace him. We don't have that. Women are bitchy, and women can definitely talk about being equal and put the ladder up the side of the wall, but the minute up they've got to the top of the wall, move the ladder away because they don't actually want any other women to succeed. We get that, but I don't think it's as cutthroat as it is for men.
It's not as cutthroat. It's a bit more simple, but there's always that hierarchy. That's always who's the strongest, who's the biggest, what can you say? There's always an element of control, because there has to be an element of control for men. And I think that's what women don't understand. They want us to be everything at every time. They want at every moment. They want us to be able to protect them and our families when we're at the house. They want us to be strong and masculine and individual and focused. And then they want us to suddenly match their emotions in terms of enthusiasm and support them and be in touch with them and what their needs are all the time. And I think it's almost impossible for men to do.
I think it totally is. And like we said earlier, it's the cultural expectation that wasn't there before. I don't think you had to be this before. No. I think men have to be a lot of things. We're not women bashing here. I want to make, let's just not forget.
There's two sides to it.
Yeah, let's not forget that there is still a gender pay gap, which is unacceptable in my book. Women are not paid the same as men for doing exactly the same job. So there's still a lot of unequal opportunity going on, and that fuels women's, call it what you want, mistrust, dislike of men. So we want you to be more equal to us because we want to be more equal to you. But in the end, that causes, and that's okay in the workplace, but it's when it comes into relationships, interpersonal relationships, where there's problems. And I thought of something where a man's need to protect can actually not be detrimental to the family dynamic, but it's maybe a bit heavy-handed, say. So I remember that when we've gone traveling, especially to somewhere in Asia or, India, and you've been, I'd say, hyper-vigilant of what the children are doing and perhaps not necessarily allowing them the freedom that I think they should be afforded in that situation, because this need to protect can become not suffocating, but more than a need to protect, it can become constrictive. And that's perhaps also because women don't realize the consequences of too much freedom. So it's a delicate interplay between, as parents, allowing your children that freedom to make their own mistakes, to get into scrapes, maybe even slightly dangerous ones, not obviously when they're tiny, without overprotecting. And often it's the women that are overprotective, the mothers, but actually men can be overprotective in a different way.
I get overprotective when there's external forces. So if we're on the tube, I'm overprotective. I'm vigilant about what's going on around us. And that was probably magnified when we were on a train in India or something like that, because it's the unknown can create unsafety.
Yeah, and I want you to relax and enjoy it because I'm relaxed and enjoying it, but maybe I'm relaxed and enjoying it because you're taking up that role.
Somebody else.
So again, women are perhaps asking too much of men. We want both this protector, strong archetype of the man, and that is what fathers should be, strong and protective. And yet we also want you to be the mother figure. We want you to be another female.
Yeah, you want us to meet you at your level. You want us to meet you with our feminine energy, which is maybe possible. It's very hard to be both of those people at the same time.
So let's talk about how people can actually overcome this, because like you said at the beginning, our relationship recovery program has highlighted this difference between men and women that women and men aren't aware of. There's a reason that book was written. Men are from Mars, women are from Venus, and yet we're still quite unaware of this when it comes to family dynamics. That's okay, I guess, when you're bringing up a child. Obviously, many women are trying to bring up sons that are much more in touch with their feelings. Maybe that's a bad thing, I don't know. But when it comes to relating between the woman and the man, how would you say a man can help his partner understand what he's capable of and not better?
I don't know how the man can do that. I don't know whether it's the man's job to educate his partner. I just know from a man's point of view how they can look at their partners different.
Okay, well then, taking that example that I gave, that silly one of yesterday, I wanted you to be there. You only ended up telling me what was going on for you because I broke it down to what I really, really needed. I said, when I was saying, can you do this with me? Actually, I just wanted you to feel on the same page. Or it would have been great if you could say next time, I'm here. Yeah, I'm here if you need me. And then I wouldn't have needed you and I wouldn't have called on you. But because I could express that to you, my deepest need underneath what I was asking for, which was help with the sheets, you were then able to go, well, actually, I didn't want to. And then we had a conversation about it. So yes, it's always about communicating on a much deeper level. And as we've probably said before, communicating maybe from your inner child. The inner child is the part of you always that needs something in order to feel safe. So when I was able to communicate what it was that I needed in order to feel safe, and that's really vulnerable, it's not an easy thing to do, then you were able to respond in kind.
And thinking back, I think that is a great point, because how the conversation started, which is what I brought up yesterday, was that you didn't ask me, can I just feel you? Can you be here? You asked me with like aggression, what I felt was aggressive. You were like, you haven't done anything. I'm doing everything. Because that's what you felt like, because you were like overwhelmed by this really tiny task.
Don't belittle it.
So you were like, you haven't done anything. I'm doing everything around here. So I was like, I've done everything. This is a really small task. And you were like, it's not a competition. So basically we got into this argument because we didn't do what we encourage people to do, which is communicate what your needs are.
To be fair to us, we didn't get into an argument. In the past, it would have been a screaming match. But it absolutely wasn't, because we were able to realise, okay, there's a bit of charge here and we're not going to follow that charge.
Yeah, it did create noise. I was thinking about it. I was thinking, why can't she just do this thing on her own? And I've done all this and she hasn't acknowledged it. Like it created this internal dialogue.
But you didn't act on it. So a lot of our clients say to us, but what are the hacks? How do you not get triggered? So I just want to focus on that bit, because it's really important for people to practice. So yeah, I said you haven't done anything. I didn't mean that. You're absolutely right. It was, I feel overwhelmed by what I have to do. And because you didn't look overwhelmed by what you had to do, again, expecting a man to be the same as a woman, you obviously hasn't done anything as hard as this. That is probably what triggers me or bothers me, because it's not actually a trigger for me, but it bothers me with you. Because you do something calmly and quietly and you just get on with it, I assume it's an easy task. Whereas for me, often it's very dysregulating or overwhelming and I can't do it. I feel like I can't cope emotionally. Of course I can cope practically. I was sorting sheets up. But the problem was the entire living room, every fucking surface was covered in sheet of towel and open suitcases. So I was overwhelmed by the visual of the house being in complete disarray. It felt much harder to me because I could argue maybe relatively it was much harder for me.
Yeah. So from my point of view, again, I just see that as your inability to do a task without getting overwhelmed, and your perception that everything that you do is like harder and more valuable. So basically, I feel like you're like belittling everything I do, and you think everything you do is like more important because it's overwhelming, because it feels
not more important, harder. Yeah, harder. And therefore, I wanted your help, and it came across in the wrong way. And I was saying you've done nothing because it felt like you'd done nothing because you weren't overwhelmed. So I think if you'd acted more overwhelmed, I wouldn't have asked you for help. I've seen this with my clients, the women. They say that occasionally, and this obviously is I'm generalizing, so this is a type of dynamic that we come across. When they come across their partner being really triggered, when normally their partner is very steady and safe, suddenly they are able to take that more quiet, steady, stable role. And it feels so good. It feels great to be the one saying to the kids, it's okay, daddy's had a hard day, daddy's da-da-da-da-da. That only comes up if you show your emotions, which you don't often. So I assume that you're not doing enough. Because if you were,
that's
you
incorrect.
would be over. Yeah, totally.
So if I act like a woman, then more like a woman, then that's
I would get
perceived that like I'm doing things. If it seems like it's really hard work.
So back to how you actually manage it. You were right to identify, or maybe you didn't at the time, that actually I was overwhelmed and that's what I was saying. You did push back a bit. You said, no, you can do it yourself. And that wasn't mean or cruel. So I was able to go, he's dismissing me. I really could do with some help, but I'm going to try and do it on my own. So neither of us picked it up and ran with it. We could have done, and in the past we 100% would have done. But it's about recognizing, oh, that doesn't feel good, and not necessarily going down that route, not necessarily being hijacked by that feeling and then having to blame the other person to make it better for you. I recognize I don't feel good. I feel really unsafe. I don't like this task. It's overwhelming. And I'm going to try and do it anyway. I'm not going to put that feeling onto you.
Yeah, and from my point of view, I think it's for the men, it's about staying in this zone where you're like present, like, okay, I hear you've got some needs. I don't think they're reasonable, right? But I'm going to acknowledge that you need me for something, and therefore I can be there emotionally, and I can stay connected to you without feeling like I need to put all my energy into it. This reminds me of a story I tell my clients pretty much all the time. And that is that I had an experience a few years ago where I was completely disconnected from you in a conversation. I felt I was, and it was like the first time I did this. And I was basically like talking to you and you were like needing me emotionally or whatever. And I was disconnected. I was just like, I'm not really here. I'm not really connected. I'm just like being here. I'm here, but I'm not really listening to you.
Was that a coping mechanism? So you were like in a bubble.
It was an experiment. I was just like, I'm just seeing what this is like. Because sometimes you have to be extreme to like come back to the middle to change your behavior. So I was like, when you come to me, I used to feel overwhelmed by your emotion. I used to like attach to it, and like that's no good for anyone. So I witnessed that and then detached from it. I was like, okay, well, I need to pull myself out of this situation. So I did, and I was just there and I was listening, but I was disconnected. I wasn't like attached to you energetically. I wasn't mirroring you. I wasn't picking anything up from you. And then I think the day after, so we had the conversation how it normally would, but I was just energetically disconnected. And then the day after, you came up to me and you said, thanks for listening yesterday. I really felt you were present. I really felt you were there. And I was like, that's interesting, because actually I was the opposite. So by consciously finding that zone where you're like, I call it the lighthouse in the storm of the women's emotions, you're there, you're present, but you're not engaged on an emotional level. You don't have to mirror the woman emotionally. You can be there and provide the safety that actually you're looking for. You're not looking for me to mirror your overwhelm. You're looking for me to make you feel safe.
And absolutely. And that's coming back to what women really want. We want connection. We want to feel you're there. So that might be you just going, right, okay, oh, yeah. That's enough. We don't need a sermon. And I think men sometimes, and this is a classic masculine energy trait, masculine, is a problem solver. They want to fix things. Women do not want to be fixed. They want to be heard. Very different. So we've also learned that about each other. Like if a man, I mean, women obviously do this. This is why I'm saying it's an energetic thing. It's more masculine energy. But the masculine energy wants to fix and problem solve, make right. And this is really triggering for some women because they're like, you're not hearing me. You're not hearing me. And the man's like, what? What do you mean I'm not hearing you? I'm working really hard here to try and get to a solution for you. That is not what we want. We want to have space held for us, for our feelings to feel valid. And that's it. Once we've had a spout, we feel okay. So it is kind of about, I don't want to say pretending, because then you get men going, yeah, that's great.
Yeah,
I'm here. No,
Yeah.
it's not about pretending, but it is, well, you can talk about it more, subtle
You have to
presence.
find that zone that I mentioned earlier, which is not mirroring the image. So you don't want to be, if the woman is overwhelmed or anxious, you don't want to become overwhelmed or anxious. And likewise, you don't want to just own that and say, give that problem to me. You've brought it to me, so I'm going to go and solve this problem. Like, why are you bringing a problem to me if you don't want it solved? Like, I've been in both of those camps. And actually, the middle ground is like, okay, tell me about it. I'm here, but I'm not going to, I don't need to solve it and I don't need to mirror you, but you can use my energy and you can use my safety to make you feel better or come to a solution. And I mean, to be honest, there is no shortcut for that. It is, you can try it, but actually the way you get there is you get there by getting rid of all of your emotional baggage and just being present and being embodied in that moment and being able to bring the safety of your body and the presence of you being embodied into that situation and into that relationship.
And that works for women as well. You know, we've got friends that try and fix you. It's really annoying. If that woman can be in her body and hold space, same. So that's how a man can show up, inverted commas, better for a woman when she's feeling emotional. How can a woman show up better, inverted commas, for a man, given what you've said about how different you view situations? How can we be more compassionate, more whatever you need us to be?
I think for me and a lot of the clients, I've spoken to a few of the guys about this recently, I would like you to be able to solve your own challenges and process your own emotions without coming to me to be a processor.
But that's being me, asking me to be more masculine.
Yeah.
That's not going to work.
Yes,
I
please.
gave you an example of how a man could be more of a man and it suits women. How can a woman be more of a woman, still stay in her feminine energy, not be more of a man? I'm going to come to you. I will try not to come to you for silly things, but if I need to feel you there, I don't see why I shouldn't. We are a partnership, and that's what a partnership means to a woman. Like I said, we're collaborative, we're co-creative.
Well, I think feminine is nurture, affection, love, attention, like caring. I don't think there's a man on the planet that doesn't want more of that from his woman. I think the emotions that you think are maybe emotions or feminine traits that men don't want are overwhelm and anxiety and challenges. And I think you can process all of those on your own. I don't think you need a man for that. Unless there's a problem, okay? So this is how I would simplify it.
It feels harsh.
It is harsh. It's really harsh. But that's what we have to do. I don't expect you to process my emotions. I think there's two things, right? There is proportionate, again, this is going to sound quite harsh. There are proportionate reactions to the moment, right? So of course I want to be here for you. I want to protect you. I want to help you. If you've got a challenge, if you've got a problem, I want you to come to me.
Which reminds me, you always used to get really triggered when I say, can you help me?
Yeah.
Like, you don't need my help. I'd be like, no, I do. That's why I'm asking for your help.
Yeah. Because I probably felt that you didn't need
And
my
you
help.
said, I'm not here to help you.
Yeah.
That's harsh.
That is harsh.
Because I am here to help you.
But I think it felt like you were using me to regulate your nervous system and process your emotions. And I was like, no, do it yourself. So of course I want to help you and support you and be there for you. What I think the problem is when men perceive that it's like an overreaction. Like, it's like, oh my God, she's doing that thing again. Can she not just like be normal? Can she not react proportionally to this situation?
It's that whole unreasonable label. If there was ever a red flag to a bull, the bull being the woman, it's you're being unreasonable. It's so belittling. We're not being unreasonable because to us it feels reasonable. Otherwise we wouldn't be doing it.
I know, but that comes back to the man thing. Like, you're attaching to an emotion and saying it's real and then acting on it. We can't do that. I can't say, oh, I'm angry, or I'm tired, I'm going to go and lay in bed all day, or I'm angry, I'm going to go and fight someone. You have to recognize, oh, I'm feeling an emotion. Is it proportionate? Is it a trigger? Is it real? Should I act on it? Rather than just acting on it straight away and then picking up the pieces later on with your children and your husband. I think that's the main thing for men. Men are like, basically, don't be unreasonable.
No, basically you're saying, please try and process your emotions before telling me about them.
Attaching to them and then acting on them.
I think we were always attached to them to a certain degree. So maybe I'll bring it back to me. I felt overwhelmed. I would like you to be there more. Should I share that overwhelm by mistake? However, I will also try to process my feelings before I express them.
Yeah.
Right?
So if in that situation, it's like looking at the big picture. Again, I don't know whether that's a thing that the feminine is good at or not. But looking at the big picture and going, okay, we've got lots of stuff to do here. This is a task. This is a task that I feel really overwhelmed about. So what is that? Why do I feel overwhelmed? Is it because I don't feel safe? Is it because I'm triggered? Is it because of this? Is there anything I can do myself with this emotion before projecting it outwards onto Andrew or onto the family?
It's funny because you don't do that with our daughters. See, if you said to me, I'm overwhelmed, I'd be there in a flash. I'd be like, oh my God, talk to me about it. What can I do? How can I support you? That's the opposite of a trigger. I would feel useful and worthy and helpful, and I'd love to be there for you. So there is a disconnect still between the masculine and the feminine interpretation of certain states, right? Overwhelm, you're saying, like you said, overwhelm and anxiety is a bit of don't come near me.
No, I think sorry to interrupt. I think the expression, like you said, the expression of an awareness of the emotion is the most important thing. So there's no man that would ever say no to supporting somebody who says, I feel really overwhelmed. Like, can you help me? That's, for a man, that's amazing. Or I feel anxious about this situation. Can you be there for me? And man's like, of course. The problem is when you go, you're not doing anything. I'm going through hell here and your life's easy.
Right, okay. So it's the way, so we're back to communicating from the heart. Yeah. So women need to communicate from the heart more.
What their actual needs are. How they're feeling. Not attaching to them and projecting them. How I'm feeling and vulnerable heart.
And men need to be able to hold if the woman is practicing, because we're all practicing, and does come across as more volatile as perhaps even she would like. I mean, we don't like being volatile or reactive. We don't like it either. So you, as men, can work on being that rock.
The lighthouse in the storm.
Yeah. Amazing. We've sorted it. We're perfect. So I hope that was helpful. Basically, to recap, women are different, men are different, and it's really important to remember that and talk about it, right? Talk about something that happened in the past, go back over a conflict. Actually, this is what I needed. This is what my inner child needed. Oh, because I thought you were doing this. Oh, no, I thought da 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 da. Going back over an argument when there's no charge and fleshing it out. What does a man think? What does a woman think? What were my expectations in that moment? And what are my expectations in general of my partner that he may not be able to come up to because he's not the same?
Yeah, 100%. And just an extension of that, what might be causing the problems in your relationship now can actually be the gifts. That's the good stuff. Like, we should be different. We should celebrate our differences. But when we don't understand them, or when there is trauma involved and everything's magnified, that's when the problems can occur, because we get disconnected. The man's shut down over here and the woman's volatile up here. By healing that, going through the process, you can both come into the middle and reconnect.
100%. Or the man's reasonable and the woman's unreasonable. Yeah, it's this polarization. Trauma polarizes what are generic, perhaps, traits and individual traits, and just adds a whole new bomb in there ready to go off.
If what we discussed was helpful, please subscribe and leave us a 5-star review. For more of the same, check out my social media, The Inner Child Healing Expert, or to work with me, go to laviniabrown.com.
You can find me on andrewlynn.net or Life Coach for Dads on Instagram. We work with both individuals and couples. If there are any topics you'd like us to cover, please reach out. Thanks for listening.